Good morning, Dublin. I always
Good
wanted
morning.
to say that. So, Brendan, thanks for coming and for having this conversation. You and I have had a number of conversations in the past, but it's been, at this point, just about 7 months since Facebook announced the acquisition. What's changed the most inside Oculus?
So it's been a very exciting time for us to partner with such a big company and to really kind of supercharge our effort to make this a reality. And the biggest area that we focused on over the last 7 months has been recruiting. And that was one of the reasons that we even partnered with Facebook, was to really go out there and put the right investment in place and put the right structure in place that we could build this and take it to the consumer market. And so we've actually grown. We were 50 people at the beginning of the year. We're over 200 now. We're heading to maybe 250 or so. So that kind of growth is an incredible rate, and normally most companies don't grow that quick. That was a testament to the partnership. And also managing the culture along the way and the structure along the way to make sure that we don't break and we don't have any problems is something that Facebook's actually helped us with. So there's been a lot of growth. We've attracted some of the very best top talent engineers in the industry. And I think a big area that we're now able to focus on is research, R&D. So we're a startup going out there and building this product, but this is a brand new industry that's still at the very beginning, virtual reality, that we need to really focus on research, R&D. And typically it's pretty hard for a startup to have a whole separate research group while you're also trying to have a product group, and to attract some of the best researchers in the world to a startup is a challenge. So now with Facebook's partnership, it's been incredible who we've been able to bring on board, and we have a large and growing research group, one of the best research groups in the world.
But for a lot of the people who are coming in, they didn't necessarily have a grounding in virtual reality. You know, there was this kind of gap between the labs and the consumer side, and to scale up that quickly to that many employees, it's not all going to be people who have this native experience in the platform.
That's true. I think there was maybe 7 or 8 people working on VR when we first started the company that are at the company now. Most of us had been working in the game space, the graphics space, or maybe applications, but weren't actually focused on VR until we kicked off the company. So there is this kind of educational process where we're all learning VR together. We're all going out there and we're all pioneers, and it's not just the people inside of Oculus, it's the community at large. This is a brand new industry where there aren't that many VR headsets out there yet. There aren't that many consumer devices. There's 0 today. So it's brand new, it's just the beginning, and we're all learning together, and that's what makes it so exciting. And it's really neat to work with a lot of these early pioneers. We have John Carmack and Michael Abrecht and some of the early pioneers of 3D graphics who were at the very beginning when there wasn't a lot of 3D graphics in the consumer space. And they were out there pioneering and putting it together, and to be working with them again on VR and hear their stories about the beginning of 3D and how that was kind of similar in some ways to the beginning of VR, and to hear how confident they are that this is really going to work this time and that it's going to be bigger than almost anything we've seen, or maybe anything we've seen in the past, is very, very exciting. Because for me, when we got into this, and for many of the other employees, founders, when we got into this, we didn't know how big this would really be. We didn't know what the killer application was going to be. Was it going to be just for gaming, or was it going to be beyond? And to hear the confidence of a lot of these veterans coming in and saying, guys, this is going to be bigger than this, and if we, can get believable avatars in there, suddenly it's going to open up face-to-face communications, and we're all learning together. But to hear their confidence is really inspiring.
Well, everybody has their killer app idea for it. Obviously, there's gaming, and we've seen movie studios bring experiences and labs doing research, as we saw in the previous segment. What is your particular kind of soft spot? Where do you see it making this transformation where people hadn't seen it happening?
Well, that's a really good question. We get asked all the time, what is the killer application for VR? And again, it's too early to say. We just don't know what that application is going to be that most people are going to use. What game is it going to be, or what entertainment, what real-time cinema, being in the movie, or is it just face-to-face communications and talking? I think for me personally, and I always try to caveat it with, there are a lot of brilliant opinions inside of Oculus and ideas and about the path that this is going to take, but one that I think really resonates with most of us internally and kind of the long-term vision is this is going to have a big rooting in gaming, and it obviously is going to have a big kind of aspect of gaming to it, where there'll be a market of a lot of really fun entertainment, interactive experiences in VR where you feel like you're in the game or you're in the movie, and that's going to be awesome. I think the real, for me, media where this is going to really transform the world long term is when we can have face-to-face communications, when we can put on a pair of, hopefully eventually sunglasses, right now ski goggles, but when we can put on this pair of ski goggles and we can have this kind of conversation, but we can be in different places in the world. And if you just think about how big of an impact that is, most people travel and we get on airplanes or cars to go have face-to-face communications. That's a big part of why you do that. If you could, in the future, throw on a pair of sunglasses and now we could have that same kind of conversation with different people all around the world, all feeling like you're in the same place, face to face, looking at each other, looking at each other's eyes, looking at each other's mouth. We may look like funny avatars. We may decide to look a little more human, but that's really transformative. And if you think about the big things that have transformed, the big new medias that have transformed the world, whether it was the telephone or the internet and personal computers, to be able to have virtual reality where you have this face-to-face communication, it's an application that could appeal to billions of people. It's going to make a huge impact. And what's really exciting for guys like myself and a lot of the people in the company that are from the gaming space is it's all going to be a 3D game engine that powers it, and it's going to be this thing that's very rooted in gaming and graphics. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think the long-term application is pretty incredible.
Every time I see you at a show, I'm always a little disappointed that we have to do it in person. I keep waiting for that day that you're going to be like, oh, we can just do this in VR now.
I am too.
Crack it open on me.
I agree.
Speaking of gaming engines, this isn't your first stint as CEO. You started Scaleform out of your dorm room as an undergraduate at the University of Maryland. The difference now is Scaleform was acquired, as was Oculus, but you're still CEO of Oculus. So what's your greatest challenge as an executive in the post-acquisition landscape for Oculus?
Well, there are a lot of challenges that we face along the path. Getting acquired as a startup at such an early stage is a big challenge because we're still figuring out who we even are and what our product is and what kind of roadmap it's going to have. It's not a consumer product yet, so there's a lot of challenge to maintaining that path and that focus while you're also integrating into a bigger company and trying to make sure that you're aligned on long-term visions and things like that. Scaleform was 12 years old, so by the time we got acquired, it was a fairly mature company. It had a mature product, and we were really ready as founders to move on and to do something else, and it made a lot of sense to partner with Autodesk. Here, we're at the very beginning. It made a lot of sense to us to partner because of the kind of long-term potential that this had, but the investment that it was going to take to get there. Instead of going out and raising money every 6 to 12 months, we looked at why don't we, partner with one of the titans of the world, especially somebody that has as big of a interest and excitement level for what we're doing and long-term vision. And that really, when we spoke to Mark, it really kind of fit and felt like it was married together. So there's a lot of challenges, I think, keeping the culture, keeping the momentum inside, keeping the excitement level, and making sure that the vision that we have for Oculus, that everybody shares that vision in the company, and making sure everybody knows the mission, why are we all doing this, and wakes up every day. I like to say we want people that work at Oculus, and really we want the community to wake up every day and want to run to work and create this future that we see over the next 5 to 10 years transforming the world. We want everybody to see that internally and be super excited to just run to work, and it should be the most exciting thing they're thinking about, or in the shower in the morning when they're thinking about what are we going to do today, how are we going to change the world.
Well, certainly the development community has kind of reacted that way. They've been incredibly enthusiastic over the past 18 months, and you've made no secret of the fact that part of the success of Oculus has hinged on the enthusiast community, it's hinged on the developers. How have you encouraged that as a company?
So I think community is one of the most important new, I don't want to call it a trend, but it's one of the most important new aspects of launching a company. There used to be this element of working in stealth and raising a bunch of money and kind of being silent until you had something to show people that you felt like was probably pretty close to a consumer product and you launched it. I really think that day and age is over, and now we're in this new era of community focus, and it's actually really shaped who we are as a company. So we came out and When we first met Palmer said, I want to do a Kickstarter. And Palmer Luckey, being the founder and the inventor, he really wanted to do this thing called Kickstarter. And we were like, well, what's a Kickstarter and how are we doing this? And going out there and being a crowd-funded, open, kind of transparent company really does change who you are. And it changes the culture of who you are. And we've let that kind of bleed through the whole organization now and be something that everybody owns and everybody feels as being completely transparent, being attached and in touch with the community, and making sure that every step of the way we think, how is the community going to react to this? Is this the right thing to do? Like, what's the community going to say when they hear we've done this? Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. This sounds maybe a little evil, or this sounds a little, and we're really trying to do the right thing. We're trying to do the right thing for Oculus and for VR. If you ask most of us, our whole mission in life right now is just to make VR successful. And it's not just even Oculus successful, it's VR and the community successful. And we want to see this work 10 years from now. So being open with that community and transparent is super important. It's changed who we are, I think, for the better in many ways. It's also been a learning experience. It's something new.
And certainly since the rise of Oculus, we've seen a number of other companies come to Kickstarter, whether it's with other headsets or with other peripherals. Even you've funded a number of them, or been part of the movement that funds them. Do you ever worry that unpolished experiences that may come to market before Oculus Rift does will sour people's VR experience and make it tougher for you guys in the long haul?
That's a good question. We're really looking forward to this as an industry. We're looking forward to it being an industry that takes off, and I really hope it's Oculus a decade from now that's still one of the thought leaders and product leaders. I think it will be, and we're doing our best effort at it. But it's still anybody's game. A number of companies will come in, even companies we haven't heard of yet, maybe 2 or 3, 5 years down the road, will come in and be big leaders in the space. So we're encouraging more people to be in the space. I think Elon, I really respect and I think did a great thing when he opened up a lot of the patents around the different, Tesla specifically and SpaceX, really opening up a lot of that secret sauce and saying, hey, everybody needs to be in this space. We're just trying to attract more companies. So we're really looking forward to more people jumping into the VR space. We're trying to do our best effort at being very open, supporting others. At the same time, we're a little worried about, I think, some of the bigger companies putting out product that's not quite ready. That kind of elephant in the room, of course, is disorientation and motion sickness. I really view that as being something that 2 or 3 years from now will be behind us. We won't be worried about that anymore because it will be a solved problem. We feel pretty confident that our consumer version is going to have solved that, and that we're really encouraging other companies, especially big companies, don't put out a product until you have solved that also. And here's how we're doing it, and we've been very open. We've invited the heads of Sony to come see our latest prototype before almost anybody else in the world saw it, before even the press saw it. And we did it without any NDAs in place and said, hey, come see this. Please make sure yours is as good or close.
Please do this.
Yeah, don't poison the well here. But I don't think you can really poison the well of VR at this point, especially given what we're going to have in our first consumer V1. It'll prove that you can eliminate motion sickness. It'll prove that that's going to be something of the past. I hope others get there as well, but I'm not too worried about it at this point.
Oculus has had 4 or 5 public-facing prototypes of the Rift. 2 of them have been purchasable. 2 or 3 of them have been things you would bring to shows. The newest one, Crescent Bay, you just unveiled in September at your developer summit. It's a huge step forward. What problems did this solve, and what problems are still yet to be solved on the road to a consumer version of the Rift?
That's a good question. So I am somewhat brutally honest. I'm known for sometimes being a little too honest about and transparent about things, but that's who Oculus is. I really feel like Crescent Bay is where it all begins, that quality level. The prototypes that we've had in the past, DK1, I cringe when I see a DK1 now, but DK2, it made a big step forward, but it still felt like this VR device on your head, and you were still kind of reminded all the time when you're looking around, you saw pixels, or there were little problems with it. Maybe after some amount of time, you did feel a little disoriented. With Crescent Bay, it finally reaches this quality level, which I think is a huge leap from anything we've shown in the past, where this kind of switch is flipped in the back of your head, and you believe you're there, you're comfortable, you don't feel bad. And it really starts to show the power of presence and the power of VR and where it's going to be being this believable experience where you forget that you have this VR goggle on your face. And that's really important that we get to that level of kind of consumer VR quality. So VR, Crescent Bay, I think, gets there. It's at least closer than we've had in the past. So it solves things like latency is largely solved now there. Tracking and the accuracy, 6 degree of freedom tracking is really pretty nailed in Crescent Bay. The things that aren't solved though, we still don't have input. So keyboard mouse was made for the PC. Gamepad was made for the console, and it was a TV experience. So what is VR input? It's not just necessarily your hands naturally without anything, although that's one of the things that everybody says. They put on the Crescent Bay and they look around and the first thing they say is, when am I going to see my hand? You want to see your body and your hand. But you also need some kind of tactile interface to touch or feel or a button to press. You don't want to just wave at things in the air. That's not necessarily how you want to interact with things. So we always say that VR is really going to transform human interaction. It is very much about human interaction. And we're trying to focus now on what is that VR input. Where does VR input begin? We don't know the final holy grail of VR input. We have a kind of an idea of VR, I think, vision being a set of sunglasses, which we'd like to eventually get to. VR input, we're still R&Ding, we're still looking at, but that's definitely a big focus for us.
I imagine that you're taking cues from the Lawnmower Man sex scene and just going with full body wetsuits for everyone.
We do a lot of R&D, and we R&D a lot of things that wouldn't necessarily be a consumer product, whether it's R&Ding a headset that requires markers up on the walls, and we're not going to go out there and sell VR wallpaper, or it's R&Ding some kind of glove or some kind of set of markers on your hands that you're not going to necessarily go out and sell. We're doing it to try to find out what that quality of experience feels like, and then we look at how could we actually, once we set that bar, how could we actually turn that into a consumerizable product. We're still going, we'll see what it is, but we're getting a lot closer, and I can, without revealing anything, the sensation that you get with the sense of presence when visually you feel like you're there is amplified when you actually feel like your whole body is there. It is an incredibly powerful component, and so it's something that we're really focused on.
Well, you've long said that it'll be ready when it's ready, taking an adage from John Carmack's days at id. And it's an intimate conversation, just a few close friends. Can you tell us how close we are to being ready for the consumer version?
What can I say on that? Well, we get asked that just about every time we speak.
This isn't the first time you've been asked that question?
No. We want to get it right. We really do. We've gone out there and kind of set this bar saying we are going to get it right, and we're not going to ship until we get it right. We also don't want that to be 4 or 5 years from now. We want it to be soon. We're all hungry for this to happen, and we want content developers. We want the ecosystem to show up. And if you don't give them a roadmap and a real path to a plausible market, consumer market, then it's hard for them to come and invest in the space. So I think we're getting very close. We are still working on things like input and the ergonomics of the headset, the industrial design. We want it to be a beautiful product. There's no reason it can't be a beautiful product. Our previous developer kits are not beautiful products. So we still have a ways to go, and there's still a number of things that we're working on, but we're getting much closer, and I think, again, we like to say it's months, not necessarily years away. It's many months, not a few months. So we're still working on a number of aspects, but we're getting very close. And I think Crescent Bay, I would go on record as saying, hardware-wise for the headset, it's arguably almost there for the consumer product, and now there's a few other parts. So we are finalizing the specifications for a lot of that consumer version, and the headset is largely finalized at this point.
Excellent. Brennan, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.